Hey friends, it's Joanne here. Welcome to our very first video lesson. For those of you who are pledging $5 or more a month, I thank you so much. And as my way of thanking you, I'm going to be offering these mini weekly creative expression lessons. So today I wanted to introduce you to some of my favorite lettering tools. Of course, these can be used for other forms of art and creative expression, but for today, I'm just going to show you how to use them for lettering. So the first tool is the pointed pen or modern calligraphy nib and pen holder. And the basis of pointed pen calligraphy is the concept that applying pressure on the downstroke separates the tines, and then as you transition to an upstroke, the tines come together, creating a fine upstroke. So I'll demonstrate that with ink in a moment, but I wanted just to show you the tool for now. The next pen is called a Tombow Fudenosuke, and this is their hard tip variety, as you can see by the code here, WSBH150. This is the hard tip, and it just means that you can apply a bit more pressure and still get a nice fat stroke and a nice fine upstroke. So this is going to get you the same result as the nib, but you're going to hold it in a completely different way, and it has a different feel to it altogether. And lastly for today, we have a brush marker, and this is also one of my favorites. It's by Faber-Castell. It's the PITT Artist Pen I Love Orange, and this is a larger brush marker, not unlike the Tombow dual tip brush pen that is very popular. So I'm just going to jump right in and show you how these three different tools are a little bit different. So we'll start with the calligraphy nib. This is black Sumi ink. It's one of my favorites. It's not very expensive, comes in a nice large pot of ink, and it's just black ink. Once this is dry, it's waterproof, which makes it really great for using for illustration, or if you thought you might want to embellish your lettering with some watercolor or markers later on to add some color and interest. So I've just dipped my nib into the ink so that it's nicely coated. And to demonstrate, I'll start with a light upstroke and then apply pressure to get those nice thick downstrokes. Up again for a light stroke and down for a nice heavy stroke. And now you can see that I need to redip my nib into the ink. So that's called railroading when that happens. And it's the perfect indicator to when you need to redip your ink. So the way I'm holding this tool is such that the curve of the nib is pointed straight up to the ceiling. It's not angled in any way. And I'm holding the tool so that my nib is parallel, which means going in the same direction as the direction of my stroke. And that is so that as I apply pressure, the tines have a chance to fully separate. I would not be able to get that kind of separation if I was holding my nib this way. See, I cannot spread those tines apart. And similarly, if I had the nib rotated at all, now I just can't get that kind of separation. So it's really critical to make sure that you're holding the nib so that the curve is pointing straight to the ceiling and so that it is parallel to the direction of your stroke. So I'll just show you by writing out my name how that might look. If that happens, you can just go in and fill that. Just like that. So that's calligraphy 101, or at least modern calligraphy pointed pen 101. And I'm going to be getting into more detail in a future video about the foundation strokes that you need to know in order to build the alphabet as I've done here. So you'll have to stay tuned for another week for that video. I'm just going to rinse that nib off and lay it flat to dry. And I'll put my lid on my ink. If nibs and ink feel a little bit scary for now, or you don't have access to those tools, but perhaps you have access to a brush pen or a brush marker, we can achieve the same look using these tools. We'll start with the Tombow Fudenosuke brush pen. But this time, because we're not working with tines that separate, we're working with a flexible nib, we actually want to hold the pen perpendicular to the stroke this time. So if our stroke is going up and down on the page, we want to hold the pen perpendicular, which is coming into it at a right angle. So it might mean adjusting the angle of your wrist somewhat, or adjusting the angle of your paper. You can see that I've got my paper on a rather severe angle. It's not how I would hold it if I was just using a ballpoint pen, but because of the angle of the tool is so important, it's easier for me to adjust the angle of my paper so that my body and my arm and my wrist continue to be comfortable. So I'll just replicate this stroke here up above, and then I'll write my name again with this tool so that you can see how this pen works. So the result looks just about identical to the ink and nib up above. But this is a much more accessible tool. It's easier to manipulate, easier to take with you, easier to just, open it up and start lettering or drawing instead of, getting out your ink and getting out your nibs and cleaning them and doing all of that prep work. Not that that's a big chore, but it certainly is easier to pull out a pen and start playing with it. So again, to spell my name, I'm going to hold it perpendicular to the direction of my stroke so that as I apply pressure, the nib flattens out, or the tip flattens out, and I'm taking advantage of the width of the nib rather than trying to spread tines apart. So just like that. And the same is true again for the larger tip on a brush marker. So this is a felt tip marker, just like the Crayolas that you used to use as a kid, or maybe you still do. But like the Tombow Food pen that we were just using, this one has a flexible nib as well. And with pressure, it's going to flatten out the tip so that we can take advantage of the width of the tip to get those fat down strokes. And then it has a finer upstroke. Not super fine, certainly not as fine as the Tombow Fud or my calligraphy nib, but it is still a contrasting stroke to the thick downstroke. So I'm just going to turn this a little bit to get some clean spot on my paper. And again, showing you my name. Voila! The cool thing that I've learned about these particular markers recently is that if I find that the end is getting a little bit frayed from use, I can actually pull this tip out, and they've offered me a brand new one on the other end. So I just need to rotate that and gently, gently reinsert it into the barrel, and I have a nice new fresh tip on the end of my pen. So it's giving me twice the lifespan of this marker. So in review, I've shown you how to use a pointed pen nib. This one is the Nikko G. I'll put the details in the description of the video. And black ink. I've shown you the Tombow Fudenosuke Hard Tip marker. And I've shown you the Faber-Castell Artist PITT pen, which is a brush marker. So have fun playing with those. Keep in mind the different angles of your tool depending on which tool it is. For the nib and ink, you want to make sure that you're parallel to the direction of your stroke so that you can spread those tines on your downstrokes. And for pens and markers, you want to make sure that you're perpendicular to the stroke so that you are flattening out the tip of the tool to take advantage of the width of it in order to create those thick downstrokes and thin upstrokes. So I look forward to seeing you play with these new tools, and I would love for you to post photos of your work in the comments of this post. Thank you so much. I will see you next week with a new video. Bye for now.